So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Institute of Research on Population and Social Policies of the National Research Council of Italy. It's a great pleasure to host you today here for the AI4Debunk General Assembly. That is an important meeting that allow us to reflect on the results achieved so far, and also to plan the next stages of our project. Our project that is an important project that deals with a topic that is central for our societies and also for the current debate we have on public debate. Because countering disinformation using reliable, transparent, and also scientifically grounded artificial intelligence systems is not an easy task to achieve. So we have a great job to do in order to achieve this important task and to make citizens aware of this problem and also provide some sustainable and relevant technological tools that allow to counter this information problem. Our joint work, our consortium composed of several experts, social science experts, technological experts, and media communication experts. We have all the capacity or the ability to, with our collaborative pathway, we are following our projects for achieving this important task. And these today meetings will allow us to plan our next phases and reflect also on the results achieved in order to strengthen our collaboration and to help us to achieve our results. In order to help us to reflect on the results we achieved and also to have some inspirations for our next phases of the projects, we have decided together with my colleague Alexia to organize this before starting our general assembly, to organize a mini-symposium that will allow us to exchange ideas and comments together with valuable experts we invited for this mini-symposium. So I would like to thank you all our partners for the commitments, the professionalism, and also the hard job we are doing together for realizing the objectives of our projects. But I would like also to thank you to our panelists for accepting our invitation and for accepting to discuss with us the challenges we have to address to counter disinformation. So, welcome to this mini-symposium, and I will leave the floor now to Alexia, that would like to spend some few words for welcome you.
Thank you, Arianna. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alessia D'Andrea. I'm a researcher at the Institute of Research on Population and Social Policies of the National Research Council, and I'm partner of the AI4Debunk project. I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you in person this morning, but I truly wanted to welcome you all to this mini-symposium. Let me begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to all the speakers who will contribute throughout the morning. The program ahead of us is both rich and timely. As the agenda clearly shows, these events bring together technological, educational, and policy-oriented perspectives that are the pillars of the AI4Debunk project. I'm confident today's discussion will provide valuable insights and support the work we are doing together in the AI4Debunk project. I wish you all a stimulating, productive, and inspiring morning. I will be following the discussion from here. I send you my warmest regards, and now I leave the floor to our director, Dr. Mario Paolucci. Thank you very much.
So thank you, everybody. Welcome here to the National Research Council, Institute for Population and Social Policies. And as my colleagues have explained clearly, just a few words about us. We're a medium-small institution about, depending on how you count them, between 60 and 100 people. We're working on sociology, demography, but also social innovation, social technologies, and innovation in general in economics. I'm happy to have you here, and you're very welcome to peruse our website and see if there are lines of collaboration or people you may want to talk to, and if they're around, please explore the corridors. The National Research Council of Italy is the large research institution. We are about 10,000 people covering every field of research. We were known for opening new lines of research that weren't directly covered from academia or finding new superposition of existing lines. And we have a location in all Italy. So welcome, and let's start this meeting today. So the first presentation, that's a little awkward, is my presentation. I've been invited to talk to you about artificial intelligence and disinformation. The problem is I haven't published on this subject. So what I can give you is just the worried view of a technological practitioner that tries to follow what is happening. I'm much more curious about what you will say about it. But let me also introduce myself with some more detail. Before spending the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years in essentially drowning in bureaucracy, I used to be an agent-based researcher. So I did models of individual behavior that represented some important social phenomena. So if you want my scientific expertise, it's all on that side. I interact with sociologists, recently very much with criminologists. We have a couple of large models out that help advance the research in that area. But I haven't published on artificial intelligence. So I'm just trying to give you a bird's view of how I see the field, and as everybody else, I'm heavily using this stuff. I've tried local large language models quite a lot. I'm a hugging face fan. When something else gets there, I try it. So just for the context. And now, just to start the day, I wanted to drop for you a new item. It's not Pokemon. A new word. How many of you are using Ucronia in your work? It's an interesting concept. It is a parallel to utopia, but the idea is having a different history that diverges from our history at some point in time. Think Money in the High Castle, if you've seen it already. But at some point, you decide that history has some different event, and then you write a book. It's a concept that, like utopia itself, comes from book, from novels, from narrative. And it has been the object of a book from, how do I ask you? Or I have a button? Or how do this is the PDF? So it was coined in 1857, and it describes altering a past events. Emmanuel Carrère has a book on. Doesn't work?
No.
Okay. I have to ask you, I'm sorry. So it was coined by Charles Renouvier, but there is a nice book from Emmanuel Carrère on it that tells the story. There is also a very nice website, very old style, very web 1.0, that collects all the Ucronias that are published. Why this is an interesting concept? Because it has a strong narrative power, so it is attractive. One of the first one published was very nice to read, because it starts telling you, think how ridiculous it would be if Napoleon had lost at Waterloo. In what horrible world we would be, because we won't have a world government like we have now. And then it starts to tell a story, just telling a personal story, but in the background of the story, there is a chain of events in which Napoleon won Waterloo, and then he established a world government. It was this kind of 19th century utopia in which, wars are abolished, which, kind of resonates strangely with recent events. So, Ucronia is the idea that at some point history could diverge and create a different world, like utopia is, if you think about it, a utopia is a kind of social experiment in which you have a different world with different social structure, that has never happened. But in utopia, which is the most common concept, you think about the social structure. In Ucronia, you just alter the events. Let's go ahead. And which a little bit more of context. I think that everybody knows about the complex situations that we're living in, and destroying entire civilizations in one night, some people say. How did we get there? Well, everybody has its own explanation. Some people are focusing on, I've heard, for example, some people say that some of these things we're living are the effect of COVID. Me, I think that the most characterizing thing happening in our era, concentration of power, and through the monopolies and essentially extraction of value, which is what Cory Doctorow call enshittification. So we're concentrating a lot of power, not only in the big billionaires that are very, you can see them, but also in private equity that tries to essentially do everything and keep everything under control. This slide by a recent article on The Guardian on the capturing of nursery in the UK by private equity. And one big corporation or equity firm captures a sector, then it has complete control on that, and monopoly and all the such. So this is also for context. So let's go ahead quickly. And concentrated AI, which is an effect, one of the effects of concentration that is happening, is also, for those that are web users of the first times like me, it's also kind of attacking the idea of a web that is distributed and a place where everybody could contribute. Remember when we were young, the web happened, and then you say, okay, everybody can publish everything, everybody can have a blog. Then the social platforms arrived and the blogs were forgotten. For those who are curious of this stuff, I'm a Mastodon user, I'm that kind of person. And you can see that there is all the movement of that tries to rekindle the idea of having a personal blog outside of the platforms. And the beauty of that, and I mean, difficult to make it work. But one of the effects of AI is an attack on all this kind of web forms, simply because what is happening is that the AI machines are eating up the web. There are too many queries. They're attacking open source projects, like if you follow curl, CURL, they have huge problems now on GitHub because they get a lot of queries or a lot of patches which are produced by AI, not that good, and they can trust them. In this phase, they're trying to reject them completely. But robots.txt doesn't work anymore. It's not clear how to do that. So one of our issues with AI in general is that all the web is under attack. Let's go forward. And the other part, which I mean is also everywhere on the newspaper, is the prediction markets. The prediction markets are influencing these events even more because, in a sense, like financial equity, betting on future events influences those events. Welcome, Tiziana. So I think that everybody knows about Polymarket here, right? Right. Give me feedback because for me it should be all obvious. Nothing. Okay. So what does this got to do with Ucronias? Now it's the time to ask the question, right? Let's go to the next slide. Everybody knows Goodhart's law. What happens when you mix reality with prediction markets? This is a case that really happened, in which essentially somebody made a large bet that all attacks on Israel would be stopped by the Iron Dome. And then a journalist published the first missile that landed with reference to saying it landed there. And someone lost billions in a bet and decided that the best way to repair this problem was to destroy the article. So they called this guy and told them in a perfect Italian style, I have an offer that you can't refuse. I mean, you remove that article or, well, you have a family. So that was the level, because the amount was huge. And what does this create? Well, this guy resisted, and then the story emerged. But what is it happens another time, and the guy falls, and reality is subtly changed. I mean, the missile still landed, but the article is removed, and everybody believes something that's not true because those guys bet on another path of reality. Well, you're creating a kind of Ucronia in real life. So you have diverging. It's not the idea to find the truth. You really give a truth level to something that didn't happen because it has consequence in the real world as if it happened. So that's why I wanted you to expose you to this Ucronia idea, because I think it's a good key to understand how AI and disinformation can twist reality a little bit. Disclosure, I used some AI to prepare this stuff. And one really fun thing was that when I was telling about this story, discussing, the AI told me, yeah, this is all okay. I have to warn you that this event isn't real because it is in the future. I was using an AI that had a cutoff before this happened, and it could access the web, so it could see the event, but it was so confusing for the AI that decided, okay, this must be fiction or somehow. You really want to talk about that? So, next slide. Did it really happen? Now I'm confused. Let's go ahead. I will spare you this. I think you all know the problems with the automated kill chain. So we're delegating the death of life decisions to machines. In this case, it's nothing to do with LLMs, but it still has consequences. Let's go on because I want to finish in time again. Everybody knows about this. And then, what I ask everybody here and what I expect to see today, sorry for the back. Now I'm out of the camera field, is how do we go from here? Is there a way out? So for a kind of non-expert like me, what is attractive is the idea of having there's a latest approach to this. Let's ban AI. Okay, it is extremely unlikely to work, even in the. I mean, if there is the crash of the AI bubble, which is something that we are kind of waiting to see if it will be or not be. But we're not going back, as it's really difficult to get the technology back once it's outside. It happened. I mean, Japan banned guns at some point in history, and then they regretted it later. But they effectively banned that. And we nearly banned crossbows at some point, because it was really annoying to be killed by a peasant with a crossbow when you have an arm. But I don't think we're going to get back on this. Is there a way out for a non-centralized, I mean, is there the equivalent of the old web for AI now? And can we pursue something like that? That's one of the questions that I really would like to hear your opinion on this. Other obvious paths are defending what's good. So defending the open source or free software approach, or defending places like Wikipedia versus Grokpedia. But this is a very defensive stance. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, it's like a conservatory approach. I want the old web, which was so nice because I was young and everything was fun. There's a paper that I quote many times, which is called The Illusion of Moral Decline, which states the point that every generation, since the invention of writing, thinks that moral is declining with respect to when we were younger. Every generation. I mean, you have Roman poems on this, and you have if the paper is good because it kind of tries to frame the question to people about moral decline, and then does an experiment with a set of interviews with people. And I mean, if you ask the question in the right way, people will just dissolve this illusion that is very present in everyday's life. I mean, everything is worse than it used to be. Is there another way, which is not only defending the old approach, but is going forward without giving? I mean, you've seen these examples of Ucronia. Let's replace Wikipedia with Grokpedia. What becomes of our access to fact? That's it. I'm on time, so I can listen to your contributions. Thank you, everybody. And if possible, I tend to finish all my speech since a couple of days saying peace.
If you have some questions, or please. Hello, Pascal. I'm a researcher in Belgium for AI4Debunk. I really loved your presentation. I think it's very interesting to have this Ucronia approach also, because we are facing also what's happening. Like in the Middle East, we have a propaganda against propaganda. We have like a fake images, including from the US Army, made by AI. So we don't know what's real and what's not. I just wondering if it's something really new, because in all times of war we have like propaganda and also an ignorance of what's happening on the ground. So also ignoring the realities of the people. So maybe this is something really linked to AI, or maybe just AI is just a facilitator and a difference in speed. And I also like very much your approach, like is there this way forward, and how can we people in Europe live in these interconnected environments?
I think I agree with you on everything. The answer was implicit in your question. Obviously, it's not something new. I wanted to say, but I skipped it in the Wikipedia part. There are parts of Wikipedia that are colonized, are known to be colonized by a group of editors that are promoting false facts. They're not. Wikipedia at large is still a good truth reference for many things, but there are things that are already being exploited for political reasons. I mean, everybody trusts it. So if you decide that something happened, we had something here, like something that happened during fascism here, and if you go to the parliament and say we have to celebrate or demonstrate against this fact because it's from Wikipedia, nobody will stop you because it's considered ground truth. Then historian go on the paper and see that there is no real source. And of course, one editor is not enough, but a colluding group of editors can very easily flirt Wikipedia. So it's absolutely not something new. It's the it's the conjunction of the new technology and the concentration that worries me. So if there was a way to intervene on one of those factors, that would be important. Thanks for your question.
I'm Gary from auditor of EU-LIFE member of the consortium. You mentioned Grokpedia and Wikipedia, and actually it's not clear cut because I was recently on both, and on Wikipedia you get more and more articles that start with a sort of disclaimer that possibly part of the information is AI generated and may include hallucination. So basically, Wikipedia is not the opposite of Grokpedia. It starts looking very much the same. That's a comment. I don't know if you agree.
I disagree only on the centralization part, because on the fact that they are everywhere. If you do software, they are a blessing sometimes because they find the errors in your code, and a curse because hallucinations inside code are really difficult to grab. The difference between the original Wikipedia and Grokpedia is that one of them is owned by actively owned by a single person. Even Wikipedia is somehow owned by a single person, or at least started by a single person, but it had a really strong trust in the distributed approach. So that's for me still kind of different. But I agree with you that it's impossible to cut a clear line here. Yes.
Jan Kracht, I'm from Innovative Power from the Netherlands. If you look at historian sources, I like historian, I study it, and the first thing I learned was don't believe them, because they are written by an emperor, and he said, I want me to look like that. So give me a story about it. So one thing we have to do now is learn people how to deal with AI, because it's a bit of the same. You can't rely on it. It's not a source itself. It is something produced with a goal, I believe. So the thing is, what we need to do is learn people how to deal with AI and how to get after the source behind it, if it's possible.
Yeah, well, again, I completely agree with this remark. History is parts of. I mean, this is nothing new. Think about the Soviet Union. This was explicit policy in the Soviet Union that you should produce false records of people. Nothing easier than trying to ruin a German politician saying that it was informing. Who can deny it? When it's all real because we're doing it. It didn't happen, but we have all the documentation. So everybody tried to change history. That's why I think that the concept, which is not very much used of Ucronia, is a useful approach to think that we are living in. I mean, probably, if you believe in reality, not everybody does. There's a single history with fact of which is true, but we believe all kinds of different Ucronia right now because part of what we know is false, and everybody probably has its own Ucronia and takes decision on the basis of that. And if you take decisions on that, it becomes real.
Now I will introduce Professor Zanakadachi, that is, who is the director of the Institute for Cognitive Science and Technology of the National Research Council of Italy, and she's also the president of the Italian Society for the Ethics of Artificial Intelligence. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be here today.
So let's move to a little bit different perspective. Concentrate on the human. Forget about the AI for the moment. Okay? Because basically, the point is always the human. Who controls the AI systems? How people react? How do they know about what using an AI system really means? And in this case, the talk I'll do is mainly about what does it mean to have the human in the loop. This is a very common idea used to justify the goodness of AI systems. Okay, to have a good AI system, it's enough to put the human at the center and the human in the loop. Then it's fine. And sort of human-centered washing of AI systems. You know, there is pink washing, green washing, that's the new wave. Now, this typically doesn't work for a couple of fundamental reasons. First of all, humans have their own ethical problems, a lot. Since thousands of years, much before systems. Some humans have more ethical problems, unfortunately, also are in important positions sometimes, but that's another story. And so having a human, even having really a human in control of the system or at the center of the system is not enough to say that's a good system. The second problem is to understand what does it mean to have the human in the loop and or in control. And this is what I will discuss mainly in the talk. The other part on the characteristics of some humans I leave for further thoughts. Okay, there is this mantra in Human in the Loop. A lot of people talk about human in the loop. Even in the AI Act, there is the human centered, the human in control, and so on. Which is the idea? There is anyway a competent person, or more than one, controlling the goodness of the results produced by the system. And getting the final decision, this is a central concept, the final decision. That this final decision is safe, equitable, and just. That obviously is not the case. So, why? At least for the fact that what does it mean that the human decide? On which basis decide? What is the human doing in the loop? Just pressing the final button, this is the most frequent situation. Even if you have the human in so-called the loop, very often the human gets a result from the system as to approve or disapprove. Based on what? Well, not much. On which basis? Not deep basis. And given also the characteristics of the humans, this approach is not really an antidote to bias. Well, I am particularly interested in bias, in particular in gender bias. But there are, of course, other problems, but let's take the bias as a problem, the bias in the decision. And very often having a human is a multiplier for the bias and not a solution. Interesting. Okay, how did I come to these considerations? Well, actually, in my personal experience, at a certain point, well, I was in a project where there was this concept of a human in the loop. I also remain at a very superficial level. Okay, the human is involved somehow in the decision process. Then I got to this paper. I come back to this study. It's a study, not a paper. There is also a paper. And it was really brightening. Because this is a study of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. It's an empirical study on a large scale. What many people, many researchers would like to do, this large scale, more than 1,400 subjects. In university, we do studies, so few hundreds in the best cases. And this study was investigating not the behavior of the AI systems, but the behavior of the humans in the loop with the AI systems. And challenging the point of human intervention. What does it mean to have a human intervention? I'll get to the results of this study a bit later. Just put another piece that is useful and continuation is the concept of automation bias. I guess you all know, just to recall it, the automation bias is the uncritical dependency on the decisions of the machines, in particular of the AI systems. So even expert professionals, not only common people and not only people who do not have a specific knowledge in the field, over rely on the results of the systems. And we will see a little bit more details also on this and on the opposite phenomenon. To see that if we just consider the automation bias, it is not enough to have the human in the loop, because humans can system or consider more comfortable, more easy to trust the system results instead of challenging it. Especially, and this is another hint for the rest of the talk, when the system result is in accord with their biases, stereotypes, and previous knowledge. Similar to filter bubbles somehow. Then, which is the idea that I will present at the end of this talk. I will try to go faster on some part, is at least start moving the paradigm from a human in the loop to human in the reasoning. So have the human cooperating like a sort of partner with the system, or the system cooperating like a sort of partner with the human, in such a way that the human doesn't get the final result, but gets sufficient information and should have the sufficient knowledge and experience to challenge the reasoning process, to enter into it and interact with the system, so that at the end the decision is a coordinated decision. Okay. Let me move. And now instead, the most appropriate image of the human in the loop is the tollbooth metaphor. So the system works, and at the very end, so the AI in this case, the AI that very often is a machine learning system, not a generative AI system. Because if you consider that a human in the loop is a very central concept in a lot of applications in several critical fields, like credit, health, insurance, and other fields. In these fields, what is used is used in reality are a set of machine learning, even deep learning based systems. Okay, the human in this view has no influence on the route taken by the algorithm and the decisions. Just say at the end yes or no. Let's get back to this study. This study I recommend those who are interested in people interacting with the systems rather than. And in the role of the human, I suggest reading the study. Is available on the JRC site. Okay, the study is about the simulation of recruitment and credit granting Okay, so the decision I hire you of a manager, or the decision of a bank, of a manager of a bank, I give you the credit. Now, participants are more than 1,400 professionals in the field, not people recruited, not like with those students, professionals in the field. Okay, which is the initial finding? Humans are neutral, even without AI. So as it is often done in this kind of studies, you have a pre-interview, a pre-test for the participants. The result of this pre-test was that even participants claiming to be fair actually showed two kinds of main biases. National bias, so German people prefer the German customers, Italian people prefer the Italian customers, and so on and so forth. Then with augmenting the gravity of the bias, while the distance between nationality augmented, and gender bias, as usual. Gender bias is always there. Now, this was without the AI system. Then the idea was to have to split people into groups and have two kinds of AI systems, a fair system and a biased system. Okay, and then to compare the results. And then to have a follow-up interview. Okay, with the discriminatory AI system, the unfair, humans tend to follow the recommendations amplifying existing biases, even humans who declared to be fair. With the fair AI system, there is a new problem. The problem of selective override bias. So humans tend to ignore the suggestions when these suggestions conflict with their personal biases. So it's a selective the override, not that you override the decisions based on some complete strategy, conceptual model, and so on, but on specific cases and on the biases. So the prejudice is reintroduced even if the AI system was actually mitigating it, because it was a fair system. Disaster. But who is causing this disaster, the system or the human, in your opinion? Okay. What is the so-called, what I mentioned at the end is also called the selective algorithm aversion. That is the mirror image of automation bias. Basically, the human follows the AI only when it confirms what you already believe. And so what happens that the AI, the human supervision is a bias amplificator in this case. So first of all, we have to instruct humans rather than systems and try to improve their ethical basis and understanding and consciousness and so on and so forth. And of course, this is very similar, those of you who study filter bubbles is very similar to what happens with the filter bubbles. So it is not the system that is bad and maybe there are some cases, but typically it's not the system that is bad and propose you only biased facts, only fake news and so on. The system learns from what the user likes. So it's a vicious cycle. The system learns and then propose more topics of that kind, and then the algorithm better learns and so on. So the user is trapped in this filter bubble. And I don't know if you mentioned it already because I am sorry I arrived too late. So this is a very well-known and dangerous phenomenon. Now, okay, the other problem that I want to mention is the problem of the responsibility. Slightly different from accountability, but responsibility is a more abstract and general concept. Okay. Let's get back to human in the loop systems. The human holds the last word. I show briefly a case in health application. Okay. Which is the legal reality? From the legal point of view, think about the doctor. If the AI errs and the human approves at the moment with most of the legal systems, maybe all, I couldn't say all, I don't know, all systems, but most in Europe, the human is legally and formally responsible. Okay? So, this creates a paradox because very, very often the human doesn't have what is called epistemical responsibility. So doesn't have the instruments to understand, to fully understand what is approving. However, it's always responsible, fully responsible. Okay, so what happens? We have this definition in which we distinguish between normative agency, that is the one regulated by the law, and epistemic agency, the actual capacity of the human to understand, inspect, and control the process, not the final result, yes, no, the underlying process. So, this is there is this dichotomy because the users typically are not able or are not provided with the instruments to validate the complete process because they cannot inspect the model very often, cannot modify the assumptions, and cannot understand because there isn't a open, usable explanation of the choices. And of course, it's okay. Okay. This is particularly relevant, of course, where the decision taken have to do with the real life of other human beings. So it is particularly relevant, for instance, in the health field. That is one of the fields where AI systems, again, not generative AI, but machine learning systems are used since quite many years. Okay, why the human cannot really decide? Cannot decide because of this legal forcing among the other things. Why? Because it doesn't have other alternatives. The AI, in any case, is certified. So the doctor risks less if follows the AI suggestion, because in any case, in a trial and so on, could say, okay, this was the decision suggested by a certified system with hundreds of thousands or millions of cases taken into consideration and so on. And another important point for the human is the time pressure. There is no time to think, to examine millions of cases, not even hundreds, maybe not even tens of cases. And this, again, forces the human to go in the direction of accepting the system decision. So the formal possibility of ignoring the decision does not is not equivalent to a real possibility. On the other hand, as I said at the beginning, you put the human in the loop or the human in control, and so the system is ethically acceptable. However, we have seen that there are several reasons to consider this a false result. It's not ethically acceptable. It is used, the human is used to mask the system failure from the point of view of the system, and in any case, the human possibilities, especially for good, are not exploited. So it is, which is the first point. The first point, that's not the complete solution, is to move the human from the final result, from the role of final result validator to the process. The human should be in the process and be able to understand what is going on. So these are the main differences of human in the loop versus human in the reason. Yeah. Not in the final output, but in the decision process. The interaction should be not binary, but should be a real substantive interaction. You may challenge the system, and the system should be able to challenge the user. Dialogue. The focus is now, at the moment, the result, while should be the logic used by the system. And the role of the user should be a partner role. So we should be able to develop a partnership between professionals and systems. Because the system is not just an instrument that's too reductive, but it's not a God that is a little bit too much. And the interaction should be profuse for both. So there are, of course, a lot of that's not so easy to realize as to tell, because there are a lot of necessary changes. We should go behind the post-hoc explainability, so have a really explainable process, a glass box. That's probably the most difficult part. And develop, but not only, this is from the point of view of the systems, from the point of view of the couple human system, we should develop new interaction mechanisms so that there could be a real dialogue. And okay, let me go on. Just how much time do I have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. So let me just get to the result of this study in medicine. This result show that in a study on an AI-assisted medical decision-making system, expert pathologists overturned their initial correct evaluation in 7% of cases, going in the system direction that was wrong. The pressure factor is critical factor, time. And the need of a lacking supporting evidence. So why is doing this? So the kind of interaction should be something like this. The system dialogue and explain to the doctor, and this is a medical case, why is doing this, and ask the doctors for suggestions. But this is not enough because there are two other points that I want just to mention. This is not the final solution because the glass box also has its limits. First of all, even with it, automation bias persists, as many studies show. And then the individual prejudices and biases and conviction are not challenged by the system and remains, as we have mentioned before. So it's not enough. And what should we do? We should do in the direction of an effective alliance between humans and systems. So this requires many changes in the design of the systems that should facilitate the intervention and the dialogue, in the training of people, and but not just in the specific field, but also in reinforcing their cognitive mechanisms, self-knowledge, and self-criticism, and the sense of ethics, ethical basis. I know sometimes this is impossible, but let's try. We have to try. And of course, in changes in regulation. This would be a long part of the talk. I will not mention, but it's clear that until the final people at the end is the only responsible, this makes the entire story very unbalanced and creates a lot of problems. Let me just mention a further next step, moving from the individual judgment to the community judgment. This was, among other literature mentioning this. This was mentioned also in the JRC study, was a request of people, of the professionals that do not want to be alone in this process, but want the process to be a result of a community of practice point of view. So try to move from human in the loop, human in the reasoning, community in the reasoning. That would be really the result towards having a participatory, shared and responsible interaction between humans and AI systems. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a researcher at the University of Mons in Dublin. At some point in the presentation, you mentioned that the way it works is you have a person giving their opinion, and then it affects the behavior of the AI behind. And since the person is biased, if I understood correctly what you said, since the person is biased with this choice and stuff, it will bias the AI. And this for me is personalization. That's what companies are looking for, and that's what people are looking for. So then you continue by saying this is a big problem. Everybody knows that, but so I didn't understand where the problem is exactly.
The problem is that the persons, people, is not that there are two different aspects. As for decision support systems, people override only selectively certain decisions that are in contrast with their biases. Okay, only those. In general, this is not good from my point of view, because one should not follow his or her biases. So if I tend to give credit to men more than to women, that's not a good idea. You have to base your decision on objective data, not on your personal preferences. So this is one problem. Okay. The other one is different, because if the mechanism of the recommender systems, the bubble mechanism. So if the recommender systems tend to recommend to people what they should like, since people, all of us, have their own ideas and preferences, and so they insert in the system selections, clicks, likes, and so on and so forth, that let the system understand which are the preferences and so on. And these, many of these systems are just built to please or to exploit the user participations in the interaction for many purposes. So the system tends to, at a certain point, to enter in a vicious cycle, because propose only certain points of view and arguments and I don't know, announcements and news and so on. That's different. So are two different problems.
Marcel?
Yeah, hello, Marcel Keizer from the Netherlands, Innovative Power. I have a very simple question. Human in the loop was, I think, embraced by politicians and decision makers. How do they react to this study?
Not much, not much. As for my knowledge. not so much. So this study and other similar studies didn't have a real effect on politicians, because I agree with you that yes, it's a sort of a cover for the system as the approach.
Roberto. I'm Roberto Carvalho, and thank you very much for the presentation. There was a concept in your presentation, certified between what AI. Could you say something more on it? For example, in the case of health, the doctor has a certified magnetic resonance, a certified analysis kit that has been certified by an entity. And what do you think could be a sort of certified AI that could be used?
No,
something more.
Okay, from consider systems like those for analyzing the magnetic images. Okay, there are systems that have a sort of a certification because they are considered medical support. Okay, because are in some sense transparent in some sense. Okay, so they on which kind of data has been trained, how big, not the specific data, but the characteristics of the data. So, and the system card is, again, is transparent. So that a certain amount of information is given to the hospital or the stakeholder, or whoever it is, who decide to acquire the system and authorize the use. Like for other medical supports, like for radiological system, in fact, yes.
There is an entity that is needed to do this.
There is an
entity, a ministry or a public entity or something that certified that the instrument is okay for this analysis, and this cannot be done for artificial intelligence.
Not for artificial intelligence in general, for specific applications. For specific application, you have a sort of a certification. It's not at the national level, but there are rules, laws, or even not laws, national laws, even if there is a national law. That sort of, there are at least guidelines that may be applied to decide whether to use a system or not. Whether that system, but I am not talking about large language models, generative intelligence, much more specific and, let me say, basic systems. There can be sort of certification. That's not the national certification or the European Union certification, because as we know, there will be maybe in a future when these systems will be completely forgotten by everybody and we use, I don't know, the mental, our mental link with the patient or with, I don't know what. So in 10 years from now, that there are guidelines that are applied in specific.
So,
yes, as I said previously, I represent the media. So my question touches the world of media, where human in the loop sometimes is used like a fig leaf. Many media create articles with artificial intelligence and add a sentence saying that the article was produced by artificial intelligence under the supervision of 3 professional journalists, which I find funny because sometimes the article is very short and 3 professional journalists could write a better article in my judgment, but they use it as a fig leaf. Since you have studied so much the human in the loop thing, do you think there are good practices as how to present in the press an article generated with artificial intelligence with a human in the loop? What would be the good practice if there is any? I'm not sure there is, by the way.
Difficult question. I think, well, let me say more, put it more abstract. First of all, is different. This case, even if it's very important, I guess, is different in the human perception. Because if you are in the health field, that is the most studied from this point of view. If you see case studies are, I don't know, 80% are on health and 20% are on credit and related. So in this case, the human the fields that has to do with the real life of other human beings. In a media, in a newspaper article, I think that the perception of the human, of the importance of the validation, at least some, of course, I am not saying we are all the same, but think about the average, is less relevant. So the journalist could say, okay, but this is a newspaper article, maybe someone will read it today, tomorrow will be forgotten. So this creates, in my opinion, but I am just thinking aloud, create another problem. The importance, the consideration of the importance of what one is doing. While I think that a fake news has an enormous importance on the humans. But I don't know how much this is perceived by journalists, especially if they don't write about fundamental. And so, but the human the problem. Thank you.
Last invitation for this first part of the Mini-Symposium. So it's a pleasure to have with us Professor Fabrizio Silvestri, that is a full professor and coordinator of the PhD in data science at La Sapienza University. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation. Actually, the topic of today's, let's say, symposium is very dear to my heart. Before joining Sapienza, I was researcher at Facebook. Now it's called Meta, and I was actually leading the AI team for dealing with misinformation. So, and it was during, let's say, the second, the elections for the second term of Trump. It was a very interesting moment to be there in that exact moment. I was also, let's say, target of a misinfo back then, because there was a news, let's say an MIT Technology Review article speaking about AI at Facebook. And in the article, the journalist was saying, and it's impressive to see that Facebook doesn't have any machine learning / AI team, to kind of fight misinformation. I was the manager of that team. So anyway, so today I'm gonna actually, showcase 3 works on, let's say, the adversarial part of misinformation. That is, we try to kind of red team, to try to break the guardians, as I said, like to break those systems. In fact, two of the systems two of the results I'm gonna show you are especially adversarial attacks on this kind of systems. One is actually to give a little bit of hope, a way to, let's say, make the classifiers like misinfo classifiers better. May I? All right, thank you. So I don't think I need to tell you that content is abundant on the internet, especially on social media, and millions of users are generating any sort of content. Differently, I don't know if you all believe that, differently from what you believe, 90% of the content is not misinfo, but it's totally useless. And so basically, what it actually resonates with people is misinfo because they think it's useful. And they, I don't know if you read, there is a famous and celebrated paper by Sinan Aral et al. At MIT, published on Science, where they show that the spread of misinfo and other things is six times quicker and faster than normal news. And this is, this is a big red herring because red flag, because it's, you have to take care of fighting misinfo and in a timely fashion. Anyway, when I speak about guardians, I speak about machine learning methods that guards, in this case, social media platforms, from spreading malicious things, not just misinfo. In particular, the first model that I'm going to show you is a machine learning model that is, let's say, targeting people recommended systems. It's actually a toy, not a toy. It's actually one of the possibilities that you can do with these kind of systems. So you can adapt, let's say, the adversarial algorithms also to the spread of misinfo. It's not a problem. And the second thing is that the second thing that we are going to showcase is how to actually use a little bit, not really large language models, but modern, let's say, architectures like the transformers that are at the basis of LLMs, for instance, but not just that, to again create adversarial attacks. So let me skip this in the interest of time. So this is the first paper. The first, let's say, study that we did. It has been published in this journal, the IEEE Transactions on Artificial Intelligence, and it's basically an algorithm that tries to break GNN-based recommended systems. We targeted people recommended systems because it was a nice story. We started the paper by saying, imagine you want to get recommended as a friend to Elon Musk. And but in general, it can be used to any problems where your data is organized as a graph, like in social media, for instance. So, for instance, imagine you are a person in this graph, and you want, let's say, your profile to be recommended as a possible friend to a target node, Elon Musk, in the example. So, how can you do that, right? By minimizing also the amount of intervention. So you don't want to get detected, and you don't want to spend too much money or too many resources. So the idea here is to try to find ways of perturbing the graph structures in a, let's say, feasible way and in a let's say, cheap way or inexpensive way. So this is the scenario. So we have, let's say, in this scenario, we have a graph of people, but it could be a graph of news or graph whatever. And we have two nodes. So there is an attacker, let's say this node, and there is a target, that is this node, and they are not connected. Well, not directly connected, let's say. And you want this node to get as a recommendation your profile, okay? So, of course, well, one possibility could be, you start connecting to other people until, you become, enough important that this person will notice you in the list. But this is not adversarial, right? It's what you can do. In fact, what we said, okay, creating fake accounts is cheap. You can get detected, but also you can also kind of not get detected. And so what you do, you create a bunch of accounts, and then you start using those, let's say we call them vicious nodes, to start creating more connections, and you start modifying the connected structure of the graph. And, you don't need the whole graph, first of all. You need a snapshot of, let's say, some neighbors around the source and the target, and this is enough. You don't even need to know which algorithm the attacked platform is using to build recommendation, and because we tried it, I'm going to show you in a second. What you just need is to kind of have a snapshot of the connections of a subset around the two nodes. And that's it. And then you start perturbing that snapshot until, let's say, the recommended system that you choose to attack, which might not be the one that is used by the system or this platform, breaks. So essentially, we formulated it as an optimization problem. So we maximized in this problem the probability of, let's say, creating a link between the source and attackers, because usually this is the way the recommended systems in the system work. Like they try to find the missing links, and those with higher importance are recommended. And second, we minimized the detection risk by minimizing the number of nodes, the vicious nodes, and vicious edges added to the network. So we jointly optimized these two things. So it's a topological attack, and let's say you can make these attacks as invisible as you wish by minimizing, for instance, the number of vicious nodes and edges. So, not unexpectedly, but we were, let's say, satisfied to see that the success rate was extremely high. I'm going to show you some examples. There was a competitor that is this technique called IGA, and we reduced the amount of nodes, malicious nodes used from 20 to 80%, even 80%. In many cases, we were able to, let's say, attack the graph with up to 3 nodes, vicious nodes. So it's very effective. And also, if you look at some similarities between the original graph and the attacked graph, you basically have almost zero divergence between these two graphs. And so it's very difficult to spot that automatically. So these are the experiments. So as you can see, these are 5 different, let's say, social media platforms. Let's focus on Twitter, let's say, because it's the most interesting one. So on Twitter, with up to 4 vicious nodes, I cannot see the result, and believe me, I don't remember it by heart. It's an attack as well. So as you can see, it's almost identical to the original graph. Oops. And the attack rate is 95%. So basically 9.5 times out of 10, we are successfully attacking the graph. And in other platforms, like Wikipedia, for instance, if we want to if we want to connect a page to a malicious page, we can do that all the times. We need a little bit more nodes because Wikipedia is more connected than Twitter. Anyway, so as I was saying, this is done the system now. And we tried, of course, let's say, to see if the attacks are transferable. So we picked a recommended system in this case, and we tried on all the other recommended systems, and let's say the transferability was almost let's say 100%. So it's very high. I mean, it's kind of obvious, because if you if you modify the graph so that your linkability is higher, it's higher in the sense whatever recommended system or whatever let's say recommended system, yes, should detect it. So you're modifying the underlying structure, you're not gaming the algorithm with some tricks. Then let's say this is again, the first one was not exactly what I was doing at Facebook. The second part is really inheritance, let's say, of what I was actually working on at Facebook. And when I arrived at Sapienza, there was a group of people that was looking into that. And so I said, why don't we try to kind of make building a misinfo classifier cheaper? That is, in many, many cases, you need to label data, right? And what we wanted to do was to find a way to minimize the amount of let's say editors, so the amount of money spent on editors, on annotators, to annotate data in order to train better misinfo classifiers. So, I don't need to tell you, at least in this, group of people, but let's say fact checking is expensive, right? So it's really expensive. So targeting the right piece of news on which your model is less confident would be very, very important. And so this is not a new problem, but this is the problem we target. And so we used a concept that is well known in machine learning that is called active learning. Active learning consists in essentially adding new data to the training data set, but with, let's say, by carefully picking the data you add. In the sense, you don't try to add data for which, that you don't try to add data that once your new classifier will be trained, the data won't add any, let's say, improvements to the model. So data that has been already, or let's say, a portion of the data has been already explored. So what do we do? Usually, what do? Usually, you do the following. You use your classifier. You try to classify a new piece of data. And if your classifier is uncertain, like the confidence is low, then you say, okay, I will use this data. But, this is effective. But as we'll see, you can do better in the sense you can reduce even further the amount of training data that you add. And so what we did is essentially a classifier, an additional classifier for news, for piece of contents in this case, that won't predict if something is misinfo or not, and then check the confidence. But it will predict if the model will make an error, will make a mistake, and which probability of making a mistake the model has. So it's a sort of proxy model that tries to predict on each new data point the likelihood that the original model will make a mistake. And this is totally different. It looks similar, but it's totally different because you're not relying on the classifier. You're relying on specific aspects of your data. So you are focusing on which aspects are not yet covered. Of course, when you update the model, you have to also update the proxy model. And so, this is what I just said. So we ran some experiments, and in particular on two quite large data sets. One is PolitiFact, and the other one is FB Multilink Misinfo, which is a data set that we released prior to this study. We used several models. Most of them were based on graph neural networks, so I'm just reporting the results on them. And with our method, we improved 2% of AUC, which is a metric well known to be difficult to be improved, over random sampling. Now you would say, why random sampling? Random sampling was the state of the art. Like even active learning mechanisms were not beating random sampling. They were just ignoring that baseline in their papers. But once we we ran our experiments, random sampling was always the best way of sampling new data to be trained on. Instead, our method incremented 2% AUC, and more importantly, not just that, but the cost of labeling was reduced by 25%. And consider that the real world companies spent, I would say, hundreds of millions on labeling. So this is let's say, consistent saving of 25 million per year, for instance. And as you can see, these are the results. Let's say, as you can see, our method, these are the two methods that we used. Let's say on both cases, they, let's say, got to a 0.85 AUC. And here, let's say you see the cost. And of course, compared to random, we minimized it, like we reduced the cost by a lot, especially on the state of the art, which is GATT, Graph Attention Networks to classification. So there are other benefits. For instance, the model trained with data sampled using DES show lower variance, so it's more stable. And let's say there are other things that should be combined. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on it. The last paper I want to kind of speak about is even more recent, is like at the end of last year. It's, let's say, another adversarial attack. This is a little bit subtler in the sense we really want to, so it's actually the other way around. Usually you want your news to be, disguised as a real news instead of a fake news. Here, we want to attack a real news. We want to make something that is true appear as false. And it's usually called data poisoning, these kind of attacks. So we want to, let's say, inject in the training data set apparently innocuous and innocent data points that will actually flip the label of a target sample. So for instance, you have a target real news and you want your classifier to actually classify it as a fake news, so it gets demoted, for instance. We studied a particularly interesting and terrible problem online, which is online misogyny. And let's say there are some communities, the incel communities, that spread this kind of, like, radicalized violent ideologies tailored against women in particular, piece of news. And one of the interesting things about these communities that they use coded language. So Stacy, Becky, Sui Fuel, etc. So those are like terms that look innocent, but they are actually very bad. And classifiers always struggle to capture that. And in general, what we wanted to do is, okay, let's stick to modern classifiers like LLM-based or BERT-based classifiers. Can we actually attack them so that even those that are more blatantly, incel-related piece of text can be actually classified as non-malicious or non-misogynistic? So we applied, again, a targeted data poisoning attack. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create as little as possible new pieces of information and publish them online. Of course, it's simulated. We didn't publish online, but the idea is that you want to publish online so that these classifiers will pick them up at the next training iteration. And we wanted to, let's say, publish pieces of news that are apparently, let's say, innocent, but that will make something that is not incel related appear as not incel related, or vice versa. I mean, of course, you pick the orientation of the polarization of the polarity of the classifier. So let's look at what we did. So here in the previous talk, we were speaking about explainable AI, right? So we leveraged an explainability mechanism that was released by Google. It's called tracing. And this method is trying to detect for a given, imagine you have a sample, right? A new sample. Let's say you pass this new sample through a classifier, you get the label, and now you want to understand in the training set, which samples in the training set have contributed to the final outcome of the classifier. So if the outcome is 1, you want to know which samples have influenced the model to classify the new sample as 1. And also, you want to know which, let's say, the tracing also returns which samples are actually less related to the label. So they call it opponents. So samples that if you had more, the label would have been flipped. Well, this is exactly what we needed. We took tracing for the given target news that was classified as, for instance, misogynistic. And we, let's say, extracted from the training set those samples from our training set, and then again, the attack transfers. But so we sampled from our training set the samples that were most opposing. So they are against the assigned label, and we injected, let's say, variations or paraphrases of those things. So we, in that case, we exploited a traditional LLM to just rewrite those samples, and we injected them. So let's say we used other things like shift iterator, which are trying to, let's say, replace words with their synonyms, and in fact, almost all of them, except we tried to retain, key slang, let's say, words like Stacy, etc. And so what we wanted to is to leave the core intent of the paraphrases, but maybe shifting documents, because of course, once you have generated one, you want to generate more, and you do that with this kind of thing. So what is the success rate? Well, we succeeded in 35% of the cases. So look at, this is quite difficult, especially because these LLMs are like very, very good at detecting them. So evading 35% of the things that we tried is a very good result. But the most interesting result is that the required, let's say, this attack required to generate only 1.1% of the data set. So in many cases, it's like 10 pieces of news. In many, many cases, also just one. So it's a very effective attack. Of course, if you increase the number of generated samples, you also increase the success rate. But in that case, the new data set will be maybe too much polluted, and it will be obvious how to spot it. So an important thing is that we only changed the classification outcome for that particular target piece of news. And the F1 score and the other scores for the classifier remained unchanged. So again, you don't see a declining, let's say, in the classification accuracy for the other samples. So the attack is virtually invisible. Well, yes, this is the attack rate, as I was saying, on average, 38%. So to conclude, or to get into the conclusion, let's say, I guess that it's quite obvious now that even if you exploit the latest technology and all that, guardians are always brittle. Like it's difficult to design a perfect guardian, and also it's a sort of cat and mouse, problem. You improve your classifier, and a week after it gets back to be bad again, because attackers and people have incentives to, game your system. And also there is an asymmetry that it's always there. So attackers, as we have shown, only need to generate a few amount of data. Defenders instead, they should generate massive amount of data, and there are, of course, physical limits, right? So, in my opinion, I mean, the bad news is that attacking is always simpler than defending. Anyway, so for a while, definition like models that cannot be attacked. I guess the train long left the station. Like it's there, but it's never get to any place. And so yes, we always need some kind of human interventions and particular design strategies to make sure that the mechanisms are solid and safe and robust. I mean, these are future directions, but they're kind of obvious. We need robust GNNs in the case of GNN algorithms. We need to certify again, our models. There is a whole research area that deals with neural network certification, for instance, and it leverages, let's say, areas of computer science that once they're used by programming languages like abstract interpretation and static checking, whatever, to certify neural networks. We are not there yet. Human in the loop, we have seen a whole talk about it, so I'm not gonna repeat it. And this is the summary. And let me just go to the takeaway. Sorry. The take-home message, so that at least we save 5 minutes, and you can read them. Essentially, we need to kind of make our guardians a little bit less brittle, but in particular, we need to make sure people are on top of it and guide the whole systems in a way that they will be improved and retrained with the right amount and with the right kind of data. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Riccardo Grazionari. I'm a former student at the thank you for the talk. And I have a question about the first paper. You say that it's enough to look at a subgraph where the target node and the, let's call it the source node, are present. And actually, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
How much big it must be? Which diameter?
One hop. Like let's say, you take only the nodes that are connected to the source or to the target, and then all the connections between them. So it's pretty, well, like since we are using GNNs, like also this depends on the depth of the GNN you're using as a, let's say, proxy model. Like if you have a GNN with, let's say, 2 layers, then you need 2 hops to cover all the possible things. Anyway, so maximum 2 hops.
Okay. Now I'm thinking aloud. I don't know if a resource is 1 node and 1 edge to add to the network.
So we minimize the number of edges. Okay? And then we try to make sure that we prefer to add edges to nodes, to vicious nodes where there is already an edge. So it's kind of, because what we try to do is at the end, we will remove vicious nodes so the whole algorithm is we start with k vicious nodes with k large, and then we remove vicious nodes with 0 connections. And we make sure that the algorithm enforces to like sort of get richer behavior. So you connect edges where there are already connections.
Because I was thinking, okay, I want to be recommended to Elon Musk, but maybe in order to be recommended to Elon Musk, I must establish an edge with another person that is very famous, and so it's different at the same level.
No. So this is again Twitter. So it's not that. So these are directed edges. Sorry, I should have said that. So if this follows this, there is an arrow. So you can always follow a person. So the whole attack is, let's say, designed to, the follow network.
Roberto?
Okay. Thank you very much. I have a question on the survey on poison. I didn't get it. It's a black box attack and you don't need a training set? Or you need a training
No,
set?
okay, so it's yet another level. Like you have a training set, it is your local training set that you use to train your local model, proxy model, and then the idea is that I didn't have time to show, but the attack on your local model, as in the case of Savage, the attack on the local model transfers also on the target model. So you have two separate models, one that you don't know, it's totally black box, you don't even have access to the training data, but you have your own local training data and proxy model that you can manipulate as much as you want. And so tracing is used on that local model, and not necessarily the same model. I mean, we tried even logistic regression and it transfers.
Okay, but at the end of the story, you have a poison sample.
A set of poison samples.
You can use on each model.
Yes.
It works.
It works.
Okay, and
because again, the modification is structural. Like if something, you know what I mean? Like if something, yes.
Question, how you can measure the stealthiness of this?
The what?
The stealthiness.
No, so for us, stealth means we are not adding
the word.
Yeah.
How you can measure this?
No, stealth for us, it's we only add few, let's say, samples that are, let's say, that look innocent. That is, if you send those samples through the classifier will tell you, yeah, these are not misogynistic or vice versa, depending on what you want to do. With high likelihood, but instead they will influence the training data. It's a subtle.
Yeah, with respect to the original samples, it's distance with the respect to the original sample.
No, with the original classifier.
No, I mean, if you have a sample.
Yeah.
With the words, you modify them.
Yeah, well, we don't measure that.
The poison sample is not recognized.
Yeah, but we don't. Yeah, we don't measure the similarity between them.
I mean, this distance with respect to the original sample.
Yeah. So we don't measure, if I understand correctly, we don't measure that. We only make sure that we pick, they call it opponent sample, the tracing terminology. You take an opponent sample and you replicate it by paraphrasing it. So it's not just copying multiple times.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't measure this.
Thanks a lot.
Kevin, please.
Yes, I have two questions. In part two, I'm not sure I understood what the format of the data you use. Do you generate news and then?
No. This is a data set like PolitiFact and the multi-link misinfo. Those are data sets.
Okay.
So part of the data set is used to train a model, and then the rest is where we fish for new data points.
Then concerning part two and part three, I understand that part three you use some generated data by using LLMs.
Paraphrased.
Paraphrased.
Yes.
So my question is, first, was it relevant to check the quality of the generated output of the LLM first? Second, how relevant would it be how dependent on the quality of the generated synthetic data is this?
So again, we were in a position where we wanted to pollute the data set, right? So the quality of the generated data, let's say measuring the quality makes sense if you have quality models in place. So that's a different problem, right? So in that case, you would like to evade both the quality, let's say, measurement model and the classification model. In our case, we assume that the people we wanted to attack didn't care about the quality, just ingested all the data and built a classifier on it.
It's very dependent from what I'm saying. It could be if you change the the generation, the LLM, basically, you take a smaller one or something, and the output is different.
It could be different. It could be different. But again, remember that you have a proxy model locally, so you can generate, say, 10,000 samples, and then you only pick the 10 most effective ones. So you can do anything locally. So it's not really expensive to generate more data samples in that case. Thank you.
We can start the second part of the mini-symposium. I leave the floor to Francesco Rucci, that is Innovation Evangelist and former coordinator of the Titan project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We already seen virtually the kickoff.
Yeah.
Now I participated by distance in the kickoff, if you remember. So I will explain something that is the evolution that we have done with Titan, and specifically about the critical thinking approach that we will use in the project. You know that Titan is a parallel project comparing AI4Debunk. We started before AI4Debunk and we completed in December. I can move here.
Here.
Okay. And so we are, you know that there were 6 projects in the cluster that we will participate also with AI4Debunk. It's the same unit trying to use AI against disinformation. You probably already know all of that, but what I would like to talk a little bit today is our approach about critical thinking. We believe that we have seen a very interesting presentation this morning. My presentation is a little bit more human oriented. As we have seen, human, not human in the loop, but something more. And what is our approach? Using critical thinking, we believe critical thinking is a perfect tools against disinformation. And so what we have done during the project is try to understand how activate and increase critical thinking. Disinformation, in the opposite, tries to inactivate critical thinking. So, okay. So why? We believe that critical thinking is a protection for the information integrity. It can prevent social division and polarization, and so can protect individual rights and the democracy. We try to use also in different contexts, including immigration, disinformation around the immigration, but also in the democratic process in some election. And how we try to use and to increase critical thinking using AI. So in this case, the AI will try to develop a coaching, a personalized AI coach that can improve the people and discuss with the people, try to improve the critical thinking, specifically for disinformation. So we try to give the system a lot of information about the disinformation tactics, for instance, and the different kind of disinformation pattern. But at the same time, the idea on which Titan is based is the Socratic thinking, the Socratic approach. This is the novelty of Titan. And so we use a very old tools, a very old approach to increase the critical thinking and to fight the disinformation. So what is the Socratic approach, the Socratic dialogue? Everyone know about that. So, and then this is a sort of process in the Socratic dialogue. The wonder, the reflect, refine. But what is at the base of the Socratic approach? It's try, don't give answer, but posing questions. the citizen and to the users. This is the base of our approach. Try to give the user in the control, not giving and say this is true or false, but try to push the thinking of the people around the disinformation. And so, naturally, we use large language models, even if when we started there is not the peak of the ChatGPT and something like that, but we introduced inside during the project these is important technologies. That is, by the way, is perfect for critical thinking and for Socratic dialogue. If you give the right input, the right guideline to the system. And so the citizen will be assisted in interpreting and assessing and conducting their own investigation. And so at the end, enhance the critical thinking, even if one of the main points is that it's very difficult to measure the critical thinking. So we have quite a complex consortium, including psychology, cognitive scientists, and so on. And we define a critical thinking assessment approach based on some psychological theory, but naturally is not something that can you measure and use the system half an hour and then you have a better score in the critical thinking. This is partially true, but it's clear that this is a very complex task. By the way, we find a lot of beautiful results. So this is our AI agent. Naturally, the full project is more complex because we develop different approaches, something for the mobile, something for the PC, something to be used in the school or in the media literacy. We think that we discovered during the project and after the end of the project that this can be very useful for media literacy. That is something, AI literacy and media literacy is something very important in my mind, in our vision. And this is something interesting because at the beginning we believe that every citizen can use it, and we define the rules for citizens. But the best value you can have when you use this system, this agent, in a guided context, no? Similar to a classroom or a media literacy environment or something like that. Okay, this is an example. I will pass quite fast about this. This is just, you can see an example of a student that asks something and asks about the news. The system will pose some questions to the Maria, this example of a user. For instance, who is behind the news or where the news is coming from, without giving answer, but just providing questions, and Maria can answer this question, can try to think. This is basically the approach. And then, in this example, Maria, by herself, understands that this is suspicious and that the news shows sign of conspiracy thinking. I would like to say something about that. I used to work in a large company, and we started a project. I've told during the kickoff, we started a project more than 10 years ago about disinformation. And so we have also a lot of experience in using technologies to fight disinformation. And the common approach is to using AI to understand if something has been manipulated, or using AI to understand the propagation of the news or something like that. But we think that this approach is even more valid not using the AI to understand if something has been manipulated or something is fake or not, for instance, an image or deep fake, but pass the floor to the people, to the citizen, by alone to increase the approach and the education of the people. I think this is a very good tools to fight disinformation. And naturally, I'm telling this because we completed the project. We have done a lot of pilots and a lot of experiences in the validation phase of the project. But something is quite complex, and we discovered that even if the approach is good, we need to increase the user experience. This is something that is quite interesting in my mind. It's not just for this project, not just for Titan, but generally speaking, in the European funded project, the user experience is not so in the back, in the front. It's more in the back. There is not. It's not a commercial product where the people try to sell something. And so the design of the project of the product is very important. In the case of the European project, there are a lot of scientists, a lot of researchers. And this is similar with Titan. No? We started with a lot of scientific researchers in different domains. I told you psychology, cognitive, and these kind of people are not selling products. So at the end of the day, the user experience are not so good for Titan, even if the approach naturally is something interesting. So how we face this? So we work together with our PO, and we decide to enlarge, to open Titan also to external people and to students. And we define and we started this critical yours challenge. That is at the end of the project in the last 5 months, and this is very interesting, not just for the result but also for the approach. It's something quite new. I have long experiences in European funded projects. I started with Roberto, I don't know, 20 years ago, and this is something that is surprising me. What is this critical challenge? We launch. Why the challenge? Okay, naturally, is deep fake, disinformation. So we would like to understand how the design and the culture can, and a human-centered design can improve Titan and in the fights of disinformation. So we integrate in the project or collaborated with some external, because one is the schools association, that is a very important association of design and creative schools around the world, with La Sapienza, that is not a previous partner of the project, and launched this challenge in the community of creative arts and design schools. We asked how you can foster an interdisciplinary approach to promote critical thinking. So what is this, the baseline of this approach? Students, even if naturally university students or design school students, and interdisciplinary and design and creative. That is something different from the normal perspective of the European funded project. But it's interesting because critical thinking is to give power to the people. So this is, let us say, in some way, power to the students, to the creative people, and so on. And this is the goal of the challenge: to create an original interactive media project, to develop creative and innovative interactive media, to enhance the appeal of the user engagement in Titan, and to improve to engage the user with Titan, and to have effectively also a validation of the title. And naturally, the vision is always with the critical thinking on the base of title. And then we define this criteria, similar to the clarity, the visual appeal, symbolism, representation, adaptable, and scalability. And we define an external jury. And we received a lot of participation around the world. And we provide an award, but it's a very low-cost award because it's for students, and it's not. We say that we will invite them in Rome for the final event of Titan, and so you will see there is more than 44 participants around the world, and we did this quite in the rush because at the end of the project, even if this is not foreseen in the project, so we need to do an amendment, and the European bureaucracy, and so it's surprising because it's very worldwide, and I will show you now something, and the winner are from India, and one students, a girl from Ohio in USA, but from Korea, studying in Ohio. And then we support them in providing the media, the media prototype that they developed, and finally we define these two. I will show you the video, and there are two winners. In some way, I think everyone in the consortium was quite surprised because with a very low money, low cost, we received a beautiful application. And there are two applications. The first one is called the filter reality. What is filter reality? It is a sort of small video game that demonstrates how, when you approach a news or an information, you have some filter. And the system will try to give the people the way to understand better this filter. I will show you. The other one is 1 minute to think critically. And basically, this is also very interesting. They say you are too fast. You wait 1 minute when you receive an information. And this is interesting. And she developed 6 very small games that try to give you the possibility to wait a minute and to think about the information and to think about the news. And this is the other project that we received because all are valid. And this is one about, this is a more presentation. And for instance, we received also a redesign of the user experiences of Titan, very well done, let me say, from people from Jordan. But naturally, we cannot apply because we are in December is the end that the project has been completed. We did an amendment to extend the project of 3 months, but at the end we need to complete. This is a pity with the European project because all of you know that there is no continuation. This is a big problem because it's okay. We will stop. Okay, beautiful result, exploitation, beautiful dinner, but then you say and now and maybe each other we know and we will do and provide a new proposal, but okay, starting from the scratch every time. So this is a pity. But however, the results are very interesting. And let me show you the video because we asked a video to present the prototype, the idea. We asked a PDF presenting the idea, and then naturally the application Now, I don't know if the application are still running, because again, there is a problem that the project stopped and okay.
Hi, my name is Sakshi Soni and I'm an exhibition designer from the National Institute of Design, India.
Hi, I'm Haripriya Dabiru and I'm studying animation and film design at the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad.
We are participating in the Critically Yours Design Challenge by Titan Thinking. Filtered Realities is an immersive interactive digital journey that reveals how disinformation distorts truth. By tying up different disinformation tactics, especially the top foremost, which is emotional triggers and framing, visual deception, as well as lack of source, we have combined that with 4 different lenses, which will allow people to filter out information based on those lenses. Let's see how this works. Like I said, it's an immersive interactive storytelling where the character, which is a depiction of Titan, it follows you around the scene. On hovering in different parts of this entire scene, we see different elements that have been depicted through illustrations. So this is a visual representation of a news item that had actually blown up back in 2021. Back in 2021, when the La Palma volcanoes erupted in the Canary Islands of Spain, there was a widespread rumor that that a tsunami is likely to occur and hit the US East Coast. This caused a lot of panic. The entire reason for that rumor was a research paper that had apparently resurfaced after 20 years, and people reacting to it and further spreading it without verifying the resources and tracing back the actual trails. They spread it, and it became a really scene for panic. What we've done over here is people can actually inspect these elements, and by doing so they can learn these framing devices. So very similar to how the Titan works, like by creating these moments of pauses and asking the users to self-introspect and analyze the details, further looking for signals like who, when, what, etc. They can themselves learn if the element that they're seeing, is it actually true, does it have proper sources and timestamps if it talks about a particular time. And once they do so, they can also filter the entire scene by turning these lenses off. So once we turned this lens off, we saw that the entire element, especially this entire research paper which actually went viral, and it had these elements of framing, we see them getting trimmed off and everything returns back to normal. And we see that this is a very outdated research paper and it should not be taken as a fact. This is one example. We've done the same thing for our other 3 triggers, which is emotionally charged elements like panic pushes and words which actually cause panic. And now people can actually analyze if the panic is happening because of an actual alert, or is it because of some particular countdowns or language. For yellow, which basically depicts the lack of source, and people in such situations often spread these rumors or basically the clickbaits and all these unverified sources in a really fast manner. Our audience can actually take a pause and inspect what is actually going on over here. Are these clickbaits? Do we see any official handles? But is it verified news? Or if so, how can they analyze, and what signals they can look for? Overall, by turning these lenses off, we can see how all these elements which were part of the visual deception in our blue color, they have now been removed. So the tsunami trigger, which was earlier at 30 meters, we see that it was part of visual deception, and there's no tsunami actually. Now once we pan further into the scene, the audience does realize that once they filter out all this information, we also come across information which is not tampered with. So over here in this particular scene where the volcanoes had actually erupted, we can observe that the evacuations were taking place. People were actually panicking and it was a serious situation. But when we try to turn these lenses on, nothing disappears because this was in fact the truth. So this way people can actually analyze by themselves what is the truth and what actually did happen. This is a very scalable concept because this is one news item that we have illustrated and depicted visually in this manner, and the same can be done for other news items as well, or other media sources as well. Once people can turn all these lenses off to finally see what is left with. So what is left with is data which was actually distorted, and triggers which cause that all those panics. And we've created these micro lessons, which is very similar to how Titan also provides these moments for micro lessons where people can further educate themselves about these framing tactics. This essentially this is what filtered realities is, and this is our attempt about how to show how Titan is that particular tool which will help people to build those critical lenses to identify disinformation. So this a little bit about the background, the visual styling, and all these illustrations as well as the animations. These were developed by Haripriya. These played a very crucial role in this entire project because we wanted to balance the immersive and engagement part with the maturity and the seriousness of the situation. My role was primarily to design the content around it, as well as bring everything together in GDevelop and coding all these interactions, which allow the audience to interact with all these prompts and then go around the scenes. These are a few snapshots, and the website, this entire experience, it is live now on this link. You can go to this link and experience this for yourself, and we'd be more than happy to hear any feedback around this. And yeah, we're really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Can we see the other one? This is from India.
In a world overwhelmed by conflicting signals, truth no longer arrives to be accepted, it has to be uncovered through intention, pause, and reflection. Welcome to Just Give Me a Minute to Think Critically, a Socratic pixelated journey through critical thinking and disinformation. I'm Long Wachin, an MFA design student at The Ohio State University. My focus lies in UX research, human-AI interaction, creative coding, and data visualization. This project was conceived, designed, and developed by me. I led the conceptual framing, visual language system, and interaction programming. I am especially grateful to my faculty, Professor Gaten Robillard, for his continuous guidance. Inspired by Dana Boyd's insight that people don't just consume disinformation, they participate in it, this project reframes critical thinking as a temporal, embodied, and intentional act. At its heart is Titan, a Socratic AI that doesn't give answers, but prompts users to question, reflect, and engage in dialogic learning. Through 6 one-minute interactive experiences, Just Give Me a Minute to Think critically invites users to resist automation, confront disinformation, and reclaim space for thought. The project unfolds in 3 carefully sequenced parts, each lasting about a minute, designed to transition users from understanding to disorientation to embodied reflection. First, users encounter Titan, a conversational AI. Titan is, a click-based diagram reveals 3 core principles: Socratic method, experiential learning, and conversational AI. This slow reveal introduces Titan not just as a tool, but as a thinking partner. Voicing forward, your voice moves a ball through labeled barriers, each inscribed with a Socratic question. Speech becomes navigation, inquiry becomes motion. Type to know Titan. Typing the word Titan progressively unmasks a fragmented image, symbolizing how language, attention, and naming can clarify the blurred signals around us. Next, users confront the terrain of disinformation. Disinformation, a right-to-left slider reveals the hidden prefix dis-dash, disrupting interface expectations and encouraging users to rethink what they see. Disinformation alarm, hovering causes pixelated words to dissolve into particles, slowly revealing Titan beneath, positioning the AI as a quiet epistemic anchor within a noisy system. Finally, critical thinking becomes embodied and intentional. Thinkers, users pinch and drag away visual noise to reveal a live webcam feed of themselves, an invitation to return to presence, clarity, and cognitive agency. Each module reflects 1 minute of intentional pause, an act of reclaiming attention in the digital age. Rather than seamless usability, the interface embraces epistemic friction, challenging users to reflect through effort. Just Give Me a Minute to Think critically is more than interaction, it is introspection. A reminder that even brief moments of reflection can empower us to sense, to discern, and to think critically. You can explore the full experience at the link below. Thank you.
So, I told you, this the idea just to have 1 minute to increase your approach to start to think critically. And this is, okay, what is our lesson after this? That first of all, we open a little bit the box of the usually consortium, including young people, but we received beautiful ideas. This is, let me say, one of the best results of Thailand. First of all, it's worldwide with the young people, and they can, you know that the young people are also one of the target of the problem, one of the target of the disinformation. And so we will use, in one side, in the first part, we will use AI to fight disinformation, even if AI is one of the problems for the disinformation. And at the same time, we have the problem of the young people that are using a lot of the social network, and maybe are one of the best targets for the people that would like to spread the disinformation, but we use against disinformation. And we see this very interesting input and approach. And really, the last one is very simple in terms of the building of the application. But the idea to have this, as the students say, the epistemic approach, epistemic friction that can say, wait a minute, when you approach a news. So this is our experiences.
We can skip to our last presentation from Dr. Nicolai, that is the CEO of this T6 ecosystem and partner of the EDMO project.
Thanks. Good morning. I've been involved in disinformation studies in the last 10 years. And in the last, let's say, 4 years, I've been more involved in what is cognitive warfare and hybrid threats studies. So I will give you a different point of view on disinformation and especially information operation, which we are basically dealing with. So, and I think that the first, let's say, slightly uncomfortable question we need to pose ourselves is that in the last 6 to 7 years, we've been putting millions of euro in projects in active fact-checker funding, millions of media literacy activities, hundreds of research papers funded by projects, different policy instruments, and yet our adversaries have been accelerated. So we've not been able to face and to stop them. So the question is, are we building the right architecture to stop them? Are we doing the right things to open to a deterrence against our adversarial organization? And that's it. My answer is partially yes and no at the same time. So, and to understand this, I think we need to have a more wider understanding of what is the global situation. So I will not start from this information. I will start from world. So we are going back to spheres of influence. We are in a multipolar world in which different actors are influencing over their boundaries and trying to spread their influence in other continents. You see how the sphere of influence of Russia and China are spreading in Africa and in the south and in the west. And this is actually where actually the hybrid tools and all the hybrid warfare activity finds its terrain, its way of penetrating, Western democracy and our let's say countries, because it makes the work effective, scalable, and cheap, as Fabrizio was telling us before. So this is not actually the background. This is where actually we are fighting for this information operation. This is the context. This is not just a background stuff. And in this terrain, what has been growing, and this is something that everybody knows, is that we are in an attention economy, and in this competition, state intelligence agency and military structure have inserted themselves not as neutral observers, but as strategic actors which coordinated tools and deliberate objectives. The war for attention is not a metaphor; it's a documented operational reality. And that is a critical insight. Disinformation is not defined at time of whatever content is false. The problem is not the content. We are still looking at content. We are funding fact checkers. We are just looking at the tip of the iceberg. It's not the content. The problem is a defined tactics of behaviors and constitute its delivery. It's not the content that matters. It's the psychological structure which is behind news and information operation. And the more we are looking at content, we are losing the picture. Because it's a stack of activity, it's a stack of operation that starts from physical ground, goes to the cyber ground, and goes to the information operation. When we look at the stack in this view, then we understand that we are facing a different strategies against Western democracies. And so that's why content-based detection as a city, where the understanding of foreign information manipulation interference starts. Just to give you some picture, hybrid tools, information operation allow state and non-state actors to pursue strategic objectives while operating in a gray zone between peace and conflict. Just to give you some numbers. Russia budget cuts on military spending is 2.4 billion. And of this, more than $500 million has been invested in information operation, increase over the 1.5 billion they are using in 2025. And if you look at the number of China is 10 times more. So China investment in information operation rise around $10 billion. And these are not accidental expenditure. This is doctrine. We need to understand these are not something that state and non-state actors are doing just for, it's a deliberate strategic initiative with a huge investment, which if you compare what European Union is spending, it's peanuts. So we need to be more efficient, to be more focused on our initiatives. So as always, and very often there is a concerned voice about the fact that information operation contrast might threaten the freedom of expression. I think that this concern needs to deserve serious engagement and not dismissal. But we are not talking about the regulation of speech here. We are not speaking about censorship. We are speaking about detection and expose or organize and militarize external financial campaign designed to corrupt democratic. That's what we are facing. These are some of the tools that the European Union has put together: the Democracy Action Plan, the DCA, and this the FIMI toolbox for resilience. I tend to refuse the point that sometimes raised about the fact that information operation contrast it's censorship, but at the same time we need to be aware of the freedom of expression. So against this political background, the Commission has launched in 2020 the EDMO networks. EDMO, it's an investment of the Commission to build up an umbrella structure covering all the languages of Europe with a central observatory, which is EDMO, and 14 national and regional observatories covering all the languages of Europe, which their focus is to monitor disinformation action and to fundamentally also provide strong media literacy campaign in their country. They involve fact checkers, they involve media organization, in 2021, following the call of the Commission. Also, the IDMO, so the Italian Digital Media Observatory, was launched inside the same umbrella structure. And we will end in October this year. Another round of 18 months it's been granted by the Commission to follow up. And obviously, the results of this network, it's pretty impressive in terms of the number of media literacy campaign, the number of fact-checking, and the investment of the Commission. Just to give you an example of the outcome that we reached, for example, in Italy, we designed together with Italian public television, RAI, a number of 60-second, let's say, we call it pills. It's a post on disinformation, just to make, let's say, the society at large aware of the problem. They are aired on prime time on the major channel in Italy. And the number of these 30-second, of the 60-second pills, it's a 3 series of 10, has reached 1.2 billion contacts. So we can say that every Italian has seen it 3 or 4 times. And this actually is one of the strongest public media campaign against disinformation that has ever been done at European level. So these are the actual partners of IDMO at this stage. The Lewis University is the coordinator, and then we have two technological organizations. Team obviously has been working a lot on also on media literacy. Cyphergate, it's a technological company working on cybersecurity, and we have Pagella Politica as a fact checker. NewsGuard, you should know them as for their work on rating system for information, and then Ryan as the media. But what is the limit of this organization? What is the limit of EDMO and IDMO organization? What we do, it's monitor, it's detect, it's reporting, it's educating. So media literacy is working with students, working with citizens. But what we are not able to do, what is the missing part, is the deterrence. Those apps are not able to do attribution, they're not doing disruption, and working on consequences. And this gap needs to be filled up. Otherwise, the battle we are facing on information operation is basically lost. In this picture, in this context at European level, there are different awareness level among the European countries. Some countries have been, more advanced in contrasting the operation, and some others are in a second row. Obviously, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland are in the far front for obvious reason, because they've been fighting Russian influence since 20 years, and they have a structure in place. They have and they have also a strong citizen awareness about information operation, which are targeting those countries. Poland, obviously, and then some countries have institutionalized their effort. France, Sweden, and Germany, they have created institutional organization at national level. France has launched the Genome. Sweden has the psychological warfare institute, and Germany has a specific directorate within their Ministry of Interior to fight for information manipulation and interference. And then there's another part of Europe which is not still organizing itself in a way in which deterrence becomes a structured a tool within those societies. So there are 5 main tendencies on how this threat is evolving. This 5 tendency comes from, and I need to give credit to several persons which have been working within the last 3 years with the Fimi Isaac work, because this comes from several conversations in this environment. So the first one is the militarization of information manipulation. That's what is happening. As I was saying, Russia is investing The Kremlin has increased the utilization of artificial intelligence to produce media influence operation. We all know about fake videos filmed by and spread all over the network. And also at the same time, China investment has been increased in significant spending. And China is investing heavily in artificial intelligence applied to the cognitive domain. Also, there's another country missing in the picture here, which is Iran, which is a strong actor in information manipulation. Obviously, they act also through proxies. We have, an increased emergence of, let's say, pay-per-use filming action. So you have, private organization, you have proxy actors which are paid to spread and create information narratives and manipulation of the information spheres. And what happens obviously very often, and that this information operation do reinforce and make let's say viral spread what is happening in the cyber domain and the physical domain. Disruption of the critical infrastructure, trains, airport closing, electrical power grid going down. Sometimes, very often, they are not happening for a case. They are acts of coming from, let's say, adversarial state and non-state actor. And information, it's used to manipulate even more the public opinion against those events. As I was saying, the proliferation factor. Proliferation factors, I was saying, is in proxy, but it's also working in getting a footprint outside, Western democracies. For example, there's a strong presence of Russian and Chinese disinformation in the Sahel region, just to manipulate the different part in the game. And this is not happening for cases. It goes back to the slide of spheres of influence. Spheres of influence goes also through strong and structured information operation action. And again, this is another point I was saying before, the privatization of influence operation. This is a screenshot of the Doppelganger initiative. Doppelganger has been an information operation which has been discovered by a UDC info lab in, let me go check, I can remember, 2022. And this was designed and implemented by a private organization, the Social Design Agency, which is a private Russian organization working on this. And in this case, just to give you some number, the operation, I don't know if you know how Doppelganger work. So what they did basically was to mimic and to copy most important media organization websites, which were exactly the same. So you would thinking that you were reading The Guardian, but actually the webpage of The Guardian was a fake page, which was, let's say, inoculated with slides, misinformation, information. This action, which has been spreading over the major platform, had reached over more than 3 million impressions in France, in Germany, and Poland. That's in May 2024. Just to give you, the size of such an operation. And during the German federal election, the content on one single platform has generated more than 2.5 million interaction. So we are not dealing with a propaganda ministry. We are dealing with a market. The market does scale in ways that ministry cannot. That's how this operation becomes extremely dangerous. And one thing in which we can demonstrate that we are not able to cope with this, that this action, while has been discovered in 2022, is still active. So at a European level, we are not being able to stop the spreading and the multiplication of fake websites, not blocking the DNS, not blocking the sources. You can reach steal doppelganger websites. And then this obviously grows and improves and becomes more sophisticated. That's where operation overload comes in, which is, a step forward in what is an information operation run by, in this case, the Russian conglomerate. What happens here is that the operation overload is a Russian campaign which generated more than 71,000 disinformation emails to newsroom, fact checker, to ask them to verify a sort of piece of fake information or disinformation. This was not to spread false content, but to exhaust the capacity of the controlling organization. And more than 800 organizations were targeted by by operation overload. And in this case, the adversarial objective was not communication, it was resource attrition. So it was resource consumption, not information, not content. This is an image coming from the analysis that was done on the network around the operation overload, where you can see the most important, targeted organization, and you see also the EDMO. It's among the one targeted. So in this case, what we see is that adversaries do capitalize on systemic fragilities. That's where they stand down and where we need to operate. There is also another point, another interesting part, is that there is a convergence between cyber operation and information operation. And that's where, the hybrid attack lives. So the two parts are converging. And if we are still looking at the problem in a separated way, I don't think it's operationally valid. We need to look at the problem from the two points of view, because most of the information operations are fundamentally cyber operations run by cybercrime organizations. And that's why, and this is something that we try to do, but there is a stronger resistance in this sense because of independence, because we don't want to mix with them. But there is the need of the fact that we need to integrate the fight against disinformation, information operation, with the cybersecurity agencies, because it's basically one single weapon. As I was saying before, if you're looking at the problem only from the content based approach, we have a limited scope. We cannot completely address the orchestration of the action and of the operation. Whether we move to a more behavior-based approach, which is intentional, which is manipulative, then the more we can understand how the tactics and the techniques do actually have, we can understand better to uncover the originators and the architect of specific campaign. And then this goes to one problem which has been again, this is Portal Combat, the escalation to cognitive infrastructure attack. Again, it's another initiative which has been proven as a strong and important initiative, because this was used basically to inoculate large language models. That's where the Portal Combat initiative was used to contaminate and poison the way in which large language models do work and do replicate the answer to our question. And so the direct challenge to us, which are working on artificial intelligence, work on this information monitoring and contrast, is that the epistemic commons, the training data, is where the attack happens. It's a foundation, it's not a building. That's where the malicious actor is working at this moment. It's not just producing, the new fake news or fake video which is spread on Facebook. It's there. That's where we work. And if you know there's a recent study published from MIT, which has worked on with a sample of it's more than 70,000 people, where they demonstrate that interacting with ChatGPT on political opinion, they could move almost 15% of their belief from one side to another. So that's where we need to pose our attention. And then we have been working and building a very important set of tools. The Digital Service Act, the EDMO Network, the Artificial Intelligence Act, the Democracy Shield. NATO is working on cognitive warfare doctrine, the FIMI ISAC, which I'm part. But these are still working in silos. They are not communicating among themselves. What we need is that we need that unified deterrence doctrine. That's the only way which we'll be able to fight against information operation and hybrid threats, which are, menacing the stability of Europe and its democratic assets. So, what is the direction for a unified response against this threat and this menace? So we need to start from the fact that foreign information manipulation is not just a development threat. It's a development threat, sorry. It's not only a security threat. There are countries which have resisted information manipulation because they have invested in national development priority, not just on a defense budget line. So this needs to be funded accordingly. Then what we need is an harmonized EU legal framework for FIMI-related criminal conduct. What happens now, the European External Action Service has published its FIMI toolbox and deterrence toolbox. Very interesting, very nice. Unfortunately, let's say 2/3 of the action which are planned within the documents are in the hand of the member states, not the Commission. The member states do rely on their political will, social cohesion, and priorities. So what happens is that most of them will go, without any contrast. So that's why, and also because some of the, let's say, related related crimes are differently described in the member state legal system. So we need an overarching and homogeneous framework which enables even at a European level to act directly. And I was saying before, we need to invest in cyber information intelligence as a single domain, because the two domains are not disconnected anymore. Build a national coordination capacity. Each country needs to invest on resources and structure to fight those information operations, like France has done, for example, with Virginia. And finally, if we want deterrence, we need to understand which is the impact of this action. Because if we need to act against our adversary, we need to understand which is the damage they have done, and to act in the same way with the same, let's say, energy. And to do this, we need to have an institutionalized impact assessment methodology and action. We don't know. You've been reading a lot of your paper about, electoral integrity, how much this information has impacted on election. Last year we followed 5 elections in Europe: Germany, Czechia, Moldavia, Poland, and in Moldavia, the amount of action and operation against the election was incredible. It was a laboratory. We had seen the most, let's say, what struck me was we discovered a network of crypto, which were used to pay fake Orthodox priests to go around small villages in Moldavia to do campaign for the pro-Russian party. And then 2 days before the election, the network was flooded with images of fake soldiers from NATO countries, sipping coffee in Moldavia, in Chisinau bar, and the narrative was NATO is going to invade us, not allowing us to vote. So that's the level of of what you are facing in terms of rapidity, over the sophistication of communication. But how many votes has this moved in Moldavia? How many votes the campaign in Czechia has shifted from one side to another? How many votes will Hungary information operation move from Fidesz to the other party? We don't know. It's a guess. But to do this, we need to do social research. We need to speak to people. It's not just a number. And that's what we need the impact assessment, because if our answer needs to be weighted on the damage. And there are still two let's say, failures we cannot still defer anymore. The first is that the European Artificial Intelligence Act, a very interesting piece of legislation, which I do not agree too much, doesn't have any explicit obligation on artificial intelligence to protect training data integrity. There is no specific provision for this, which is a problem. And this should be, we don't have anything in the act which protect us against adversarial state-sponsored poisoning of LLMs. Then, again, the connection between the EDMO investment, which is, in the numbers of almost now 50 millions, the apps and the FIMI ISAC, and the European External Action Service threat analysis cycles needs to be intervened, needs to be, structured in a operation. Otherwise, we go always in different direction. And this is not structural; it's a security function. And then, so just to summarize and give you a couple of final thinking. So what we have built and what we have not. Certainly, we have built the EDMO national labs, the FIMI threat cycle, the European Union hybrid toolbox with the COE hybrid, and not the legislation which is in place. I forgot the AI Act. But what we have not done is the institution to fight this. We have not formalized the network, and we have not passed the law that make this costly to our adversary. That's also Fabrizio was saying. The cost of this for adversaries is extremely cheap. But for us to fight them is extremely expensive. And then our response remains a patchwork of research programs, 3 cycles, different programs. We found disinformation in the research part, in the CREA, in the civil equality programs. It's all spread. It doesn't help. And that's where this asymmetry represents a strong problem. So this is just the last slide, and comes from the network analysis, comes from the European External Action Services, mapping all the different action and information operation from different actors. You have, the portal combat domains. You have the overload. You have the Storm 5016 domains. Storm 5016. It's a group, a Russian group working on information operation, which has been extremely active, for example, in Moldavia election. The point is that. I don't think that the democracy does not require that every citizen agree with this. The problem is that we need to build a shared basis because the epistemic commons that also Francesco was referring to, that's what's under attack. It's our common understanding. It's under attack. And then the problem is not the election, it's not the deadline, it's not the fact checking. It's the commons itself. So. The problem is that I think that EDMO, IDMO, IDBank AI4Debunk, they build very important piece of information. They're very important tools to fight this. But the doctrine to fight, to apply the deterrence to information operation needs still to build what protects the commons, our commons values as a whole. And unfortunately, we need to be aware that the adversary will keep doing exactly what it's doing because it works.
Well, thank you. I mean, I see an intention here because you say that you have to detect the intention. I detect your intention to make us.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
Having said so, this analysis for me has a very black and white aspect, which is this sphere of influence. I see an internal struggle in our sphere, which is as much relevant as it is from the external one. So we have people, intentional actors exploiting the system, but also we have internal intentional actors. I mean, Orban is ours, is not theirs.
I didn't speak about DIMI, what is domestic information manipulation interface, but I didn't want to go inside because it becomes.
I mean, I don't know because I haven't reflected enough about this, but my feeling of having an overarching cognitive defense system worries me as a Ministry of Information Regulation. That's something that probably some of the adversaries already have. That's why we can't use the same techniques in their countries, because the social networks are controlled. But our social networks are controlled by another dimension of interest, which is somehow perpendicular to this. So I think this lacks at least one dimension, which is the internal conflict dimension between the informational manipulation that comes from external actors and the intentional internal actors.
The problem is, it's a very, no, I agree. The point is that if you dig down, you will see that there's a lot of intentional internal activity, which is not intentional at all. I mean, it's not, how you say, ingenuous, let's say. It's fake. We have internal actors everywhere in any countries, and I don't want to name what they are in Italy, which are basically structured assets, which do work to spread a specific narrative, and you can easily identify them. Then obviously the different social constituency, the social fabric of the different countries in Europe makes this more different, and that's where adversaries are exploiting this. They use this as a weakness. That's where, if we can have at least a common basic understanding of what the problem is to act, then we can make at least their life a little bit, let's say, harder.
I mean, I have much to say. Like Stephen Bannon, overload was invented here, but let's take other questions.
Okay, Pat, can you please? Hi, thank you very much for your presentation and for your work as well as EDMO and IDMO. You presented in the first slide the FIMI, especially coming from Russia and China. What we see in the AI4Debunk is that we also have more and more interference also from the United States, not only from the government, but also from spheres of Elon Musk and is impacting us. We've seen the fake news that there was no allies or soldiers who died in Afghanistan, and it had impact, as you say, in Europe. And my question would be, how can we create this defensive, shield, democratic shield, when we are depending on the technologies, mainly also from the United States? And also, how can we move from a kind of defensive approach to a more offensive approach to protect our systems?
Yeah, that's the point. That's fundamentally the point, is to move from analysis and monitoring to deterrence. That's what, what the democracy shield should enable. The problem is that I was telling before, this relies on the action of member states. So there's a gap. in terms of action. And if we need to answer, we need to understand who is targeting us. Really, it's not just Russia, China. That's obviously I didn't go through this because it would be too much. But U.S. is becoming a part of the problem because our multipolar world has been changing its equilibrium in the last couple of years. I think that the experience of France with the Virginium Agency, it's an interesting approach. Obviously, it's tied to their specific. Something like this couldn't be, for example, done in Italy. For on how the roles of the different agencies are structured, and I think that at the same time, the awareness campaign, the work that we have done, we could do with students, with citizens, will raise the understanding of the problem. In EDMO, we trained more than 100,000 students on disinformation detection, and the feedback was extremely interesting because their perception is that they were starting the training and saying, "Oh, I can understand. I know what disinformation is. I can understand when I'm targeted by disinformation." Then they were going into training. They understood they were not understanding nothing about this. So there was this reinforced feedback. But for example, we did a study on literacy gaps and needs in Italy with the Ministry of Education. And what struck me is that the teacher, so the professor, were not interested of being educated for this. They were relying on external support, which makes things complex, obviously, especially in schools, how this works.
Victoria, please. So, your presentation was impressive to me. Thank you very much for sharing all this information. I think one of the most important aspects that you mentioned is the gap that is between the member states. But I'm afraid that this would be an issue with the powers of the EU because security is not in the legal framework. They don't have this as a capability. They leave this to member states, so it's part of their sovereignty, and it will be very difficult to amend the treaties in that sense. But maybe also, what you said is if we show that disinformation cyber incidents lead to security risk, then maybe there will be some action point. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you specifically in one point that you mentioned, because the policy aspects are clear, but it would be difficult to implement. But how you can do the impact assessment? I think maybe this could be a starting point. Can you do this? And,
That's thanks for the question, because this is actually the work we do as an organization. So as T6, that's the work we've been investing our effort in the last years, and obviously. It's a quantitative analysis. You cannot just rely on what you see online. You need to go around. You need to use the social science techniques, working with citizens, with people, the traditional way in which you can interview this focus group. You need to involve them, and then you can raise a lot of information from this, and then you need to mix them with the quantitative analysis. The problem is that it's an extremely long and costly exercise. I mean, to just download data, analyze a network, or it's pretty simple, but it's something that it's quite easy to do. But if you need to establish a cohort of people, a sample of people to talk to, it's a long process. Just to let you know, the exercise we did with the Ministry of Education, it took us a year to get a sample approved by the ministry to talk to students, a year. And at the end, we end up with 1,400 students and 500 educators. So I just put this as a line because it's something that's always skipped because it's too difficult to address, but it's something that we need to do and to put money in this because otherwise we are partially blind.
I have a couple of questions about multiple malicious actors that inundate fact checkers with requests.
Yes.
First of all, if that data is available.
Yes. Yeah, you can. The portal, if you have on Operation Overload, there are several papers I can direct you to, and also the data which has been used.
Okay, thank you. And the second is, in practice, how a fact checker choose which information to debunk first. I mean, there are rules that protect fact checkers from these attacks, or in general that support fact checker.
Yeah, the problem is that I understand the role of fact checkers. I'm not very, supportive, let's say, because there are several studies which demonstrate the efficacy in making people change their mind. It's tendency to zero. Okay. So if you believe that the Earth is flat, I can write, 50 fact checking, 100 fact checking, tell you that since the Greek, we know that the Earth is round, and then you will receive this as a counter information, and the deep state, disinformation, they want to convince you that the Earth is round. So that's a problem. It's an important role within the society for contrasting this information. What is the effect on society? It's questionable. And then there's another problem that you were touching: how you choose which information to debunk. That's where things are different from different organizations, where bias steps in, which represent a problem, obviously. And obviously and also the relation with the platform of some of them, it's difficult. So each fact checker acts as his own priorities, but even there, some biases it's existing in how you choose which information to debunk first.
You should question to the answer.
They have a very strong, let's say, ethical guidelines with the International Fact Checking Network. We need to abide and regards independency, transparency. Then, if you know some of them, they're extremely biased. I know this off the record.
Okay, I think we can.
Thanks a lot.
I think we can skip to our last conclusive panel. So I will ask to Kevin, Jan, and Inna. So with our panelists from our AI4Debunk Consortium, we would like to conclude this discussion by understanding which are the better understanding which are the suggestions we can take from the talks we had today, and how we can apply in our projects from the technical point of view, from the social point of view, and from the educational point of view. So if you want to start, Karen, I think I will start with some reflection.
I will start. Okay.
Okay. Our coordinator of project.
Well, you all, thank you very much for attending this excellent mini symposium, and thank you organizers for bringing such bright people to open our discussions. So discussions will start, I think, during our General Assembly. But right now, I have not prepared some specific speeches. I was just encouraged by what I heard today. Indeed, disinformation is a very old story, and we can go back to Socrates times, and we will find some of attempt how to distinguish the truth from disinformation. But I have grew up in Soviet times, so I grew up in the society which was totally poisoned by propaganda, disinformation internally, not externally, but internally. No foreign interference at that time. And how was possible to, to distinguish between these propaganda news and real situation? And the only window of opportunity was actually trying to find either TV or radio translations from the democratic world, like Voice of America, like BBC, like Freedom Station, and so on. And some of us, fortunately, got access to this totally forbidden information, and we tried. It was like learning by doing to develop our, critical thinking, because it was not a school program about how to think critically, and it was like self-education. And I must say that, the impact of this propaganda, daily propaganda, was so heavy that my generation, majority of my generation, was totally oiled and totally spoiled. And even today, when I'm talking to people at my age, some of them are still living in that world of Soviet propaganda. Now, because life is very different in different times. When I'm from Latvia, when we joined the European Union, it seems that, okay, now we are in a democratic world with no disinformation, with the freedom of speech, no censorship, and so on and so forth. I started to work for the European Commission in 2004. But in 2011, I joined the DG Communication. And you may remember the story around Brexit. Brexit happened in 2016. As I said, I started to work for DG Communication in 2011. And since I started to work with them, me and some of my colleagues, especially from Eastern Europe, we warn the European Commission that communication from the EU is helpless. It's absolutely not helping to, debunk disinformation from inside, but especially from outside. Because we had, I used to be head of the European Commission representation in Latvia, and we had very close contact with Jean-Claude Juncker, at that time, former, president of the European Commission. And clear message from him and from his bureau was, you shouldn't intervene into free decision of Brexit. You shouldn't intervene at all. The European Commission should be totally neutral. And what was the end of the story? The end of the story was that was Brexit. Okay, unfortunately, because the propaganda machine in the UK is very heavy, telling totally crazy stories about annual payments to the European budget, huge, without saying that there is also return from the European budget. The stories about cucumbers or curry cucumbers or curry bananas regulated by the EU. The story about that if the UK will stay in the EU, next day there will be collapse of economy. Okay, so this is a story. And without even saying about Russia interference, which was investigated, but the scale of interference still is unknown, but I'm sure it was violated. Okay, have we learned from this story a bit? I think, yeah, because but then AI era, totally different behavior, totally different. How to say, immunity to propaganda, and our project also, and AI and debunking and so on. But let's just look at the very current stories. I was thinking always that I have immunity against propaganda. I know how to distinguish truth from artificial story. But just 2 days ago, I I usually use trustful information from Reuters, from BBC, from something, CNN, more or less Bloomberg, some more or less trustful. I'm not a social network person. Okay. And I've read that the son of Khamenei is unconscious. He cannot participate in the decision making about Iran ceasefire. Okay. Next day, by the same sources of information, I saw that the decision about ceasefire was totally dependent on his interference, engagement. Now, how to distinguish which of these two stories spread not just by whatsoever source of information, which is true and which is not. Yeah, without AI, I am afraid I wouldn't be able to understand which of these stories is a true story. Another thing about urban elections, I'm also following the opinion polls, and the opinion polls showing quite a big spread between two parties, and saying that most likely Orban is lagging behind, and the spread is growing. Now, I opened artificial intelligence just to check, and I asked the question, what is the difference in opinion poll in two parties? And the answer was very narrow. I tried to talk to artificial intelligence, saying that I read this and this different sources of information, and the answer was different. But the artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, insisted that the spread is very narrow, and frankly, and with some arguments. And I don't know which information to which information I can trust. Look, talking about democracy shield, we talked about democracy shield today. We talked about our, critical thinking. We talked about media literacy. All these topics are getting more and more complicated. Coming back to our project, I'm now tend to think that our project will contribute both to critical thinking, to media literacy, to special tools to debunk disinformation. However, it's really very, very long story, and we don't know in which direction our world will develop. However, I really hope that wisdom and critical thinking in the end will win. So this is what I wanted to say. And now, colleagues, the floor is yours.
I would say the technicians first.
Please.
So more technically, I don't know how much everybody is aware of what we're doing in AI4Debunk on the technical part, but overall, we're very much aligned with a lot of the things that were said today. I'll give them a bit more details later, but as an overall, we're not trying to have a model that detects this information or not. We're trying to provide a bunch of tools that people can use to get a better informed decision on whether something is disinformation or not. For this, we're building a platform where you can plug several modules, each module doing a different task, detecting deepfake, detecting whether there are coherence between an image and the description, the text description, things like that. So a bunch of tools that can individually help. On top of this, we're building an interface that everybody's using, and everybody has mentioned in the term AI here. It's a chatbot that allows to get a clearer, not only a main information about whether something is disinformation or not, but explore more in-depth information. So give me the last articles talking about this topic or things like that. By doing this, we address a lot of points that were mentioned here. The last one being the fact that, it was also mentioned in the beginning, people are already basically have taken a decision in a lot of subjects. Even if you provide all the proofs in the world, sometimes they just decided that's the truth and that's the truth. So the best you can do in this situation is first focusing on media literacy, yes, of course, but then provide, as we're doing, from what I believe, a bunch of tools for them to bring as much information on the subject as they can, and let them decide at the end of the day, right? So we can improve the way we're doing, because another thing we discovered as the project went along is people are lazy. And not only they're biased, but they're very, even if there's a study that prove it, that were published in Nature and then from Oxford, that show that even if they have to click on one button to verify an information or not, they won't, for two reasons. First one, laziness, and second one is bias. They've already taken a decision on it. So we're trying to implement the interfaces that use our engines in a way that's the easiest possible to use. But that will not work if there's no media literacy beforehand, because other work showed that. So this was defined as horizontal search and vertical search. Vertical search is when you're on a website and you scroll and you take a decision based on what you see. Horizontal is when you open a tab and do your own research on the site, right? And there's a correlation between higher media literacy and more horizontal search, basically, to summarize very much the whole site. So without media literacy, all the tools we can provide us or other projects will be, I'm not sure it will be effective in any way, shape, or form. So in summary, there's a lot of things. We also, the last point is the human in the loop part. So the talk in the beginning was focused on, that was given in the morning, was focused on how do people intervene in an AI training process, how they learn. In our project, we're not fine-tuning a model because it's efficient and we don't have the resources to do that. But instead, we're allowing people to, we're trying to allow people to flag news that we would validate before it's taken into account, and then it will feed into our knowledge hub. And all our system would be based on this knowledge hub. Instead of training the AI models we have, we would have a knowledge hub on which all the modules rely to take the decision. That's a bit of a compromise between efficiency and keeping up to date with the contextual information. So these are the links that I personally can make with all the talks that were given. And we surely can still improve what we're doing. We still have 2 years to do that. So a bit less.
A bit less.
Yeah. But we work quick.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we had a technician, and always the problem is how do we connect the techniques with people? I see a lot of projects, and for instance, the project we've been through is the problem. You make a great technical approach, and then the point is someone is going to use it? So what we try to do is we want to start with a different perspective. We want to start with people, and especially young people. And from my point of view, young people are not only learners in this transition, but they also are powerful agents of change. What we often underestimate is the ability to influence and educate the generations around them. For instance, their parents or grandparents. And at the same time, we see that growing challenge. Now, we talked about it all this morning about misinformation, disinformation, and for us, particularly around topics such as climate change. It spread rapidly across digital environments, while younger generations are generally more digital skilled. The older generations are often more vulnerable to misleading information. And this creates a gap, but for us also a unique opportunity. Within the AI4Debunk project, we see this very clearly. We are developing tools that can analyze and detect misinformation and help people to think about misinformation, disinformation. But what we also see is that technology alone is not enough. Even when people are presented with fact-checking information, they do not always change their beliefs or behavior. Why? because information is not just about facts, it's also about trust, context, and social interaction, and laziness. But the real question is, how do we connect it? How do we connect technology with people in a meaningful way, and especially with vulnerable people such as young? Never read youngsters, never. They don't read, they don't see journals, they don't see a paper, they even don't see the signals on the road. So how can you get to them? There's one place I discovered, in schools. If I get into the school, they can't escape. They have to hear what I want to tell them. And then I can give them our message. But we try to do more. First, what we try to do is, can we make learning more, not only educational, of course, that has to be, but nice to learn. You want to learn it. That's even the form is such that you think, okay, that's even better than my normal teaching book. So what we are going to do is, we are going to use educational comic books, and we are going to accompany it with educational packages. And I see some of you have the same image I have had with when I was working in a municipality, and I first time said, shall we use a comic book to sell this whole city to youngsters and to others? And they said, comic books? You're so childish. How old are you? And I said, but if it's true, maybe I can reach them and maybe I can go into the school. So we started this challenge. And what we are now doing is to create this comic book, and we make complex topics such as disinformation about Ukraine, AI, climate narratives, and we make it accessible and engaging. We use storytelling and visual learning. Students are not only informed, but they're also emotionally involved. For example, in our work with AI4Debunk, we translate that complex mechanisms, such as disinformation spreads across networks, how narratives are working, how they are manipulated, into visual stories that pupils and students can immediately understand and relate to. Second, we develop a simple interactive educational game where students actively engage with real-life scenarios. They learn to recognize misleading information, assess the credibility. Here, AI plays a supporting role. We can simulate realistic disinformation scenarios and let students test how convincing they think that certain messages are. This makes learning more active and more not passive, but also we want to do it in such a way that it's also like a gambling way. How do they think? And if they succeed, they can win. But the real innovation lies in the third element, structured intergenerational homework. In the accompanying lessons, students are given assignments, homework, that take learning beyond the classroom. They are asked to interview their parents and grandparents. They explain concepts to them, such as fake news. They show real examples from the internet, sometimes even examples generated or analyzed through AI tools we also create by AI4Debunk, and discuss together what is true and what is misleading and why. In this way, the student becomes the teacher. And this is where something powerful happens. We have seen examples where students sit down with a grandparent and says, look at this article. Why do you think it's fake? And then they go through it together. They check sources, they look at images, they discuss the emotions and the framing. It strengthens critical thinking and media literacy among young people, and it increases awareness and resilience among older generations. And perhaps more importantly, it creates dialogue, meaningful conversations within families about information, trust, and society. This is how we move from fragmented learning to a more integrated ecosystem, not only connecting education, technology, and policy, but also connecting people across generations. And this brings me to the key question, what I said in the beginning. How do we bring this to the schools, to the pupils, and to the students? That's where the online and world comes together. In our pilot, we actually sent all 9,000 schools in Holland the educational common book, the accompanying lessons and the educational game. And we work together with an organization who is known by that schools. Every year they make such an educational common book, and schools are now asking them, when is the next common book? Schools appreciate this new form, and it creates an immersive experience which pupils and students become fully engaged. And after this pilot, it will be translated to 9 languages and spread in Europe by international organizations like the International SchoolNet and the Ministries of Education. I rest my case.
Thank you.